and we're going to sort of segue from your excellent point because that's a drop the mic moment. And
thank you for having me tonight.
Oh, well, it's just been a real pleasure having you and just having the opportunity to talk about the public schools because, quite frankly, the public schools don't get the recognition they deserve. You always hear the things like the Douglas High School incident. You hear about the poor test scores, and now people are even starting
great things that are going on.
Right, right. And even with the test scores, and I have to ask this before we go, even if we run over for a couple of minutes, but there is a growing consensus now that these tests are biased and that they don't necessarily. Now, I'm not talking about being able to write a sentence and you just put a period at the end of that paragraph, but I'm talking about the test mechanisms themselves are biased. For example, you may be giving the test to a group of young people that are growing up in an urban area, and the test is asking about things like avocados and brie and those types of things that the young people may not have been exposed to. It doesn't mean that they're stupid or that they can't comprehend, but in my experience, I have not been exposed to avocados and brie and equestrian activities. Can you speak to that very quickly?
Or they might be really smart but bad test takers.
Exactly.
I've seen a lot of that too. So
yeah. Would you mind speaking to that?
Well, I know that fortunately for the students in Nevada, a lot of those testing nuances and a lot of the tests that were required at one point are no longer a state requirement for graduation, with the exception of ACT is a must. That's not a non-negotiable.
Sure.
There's a day that during kids' junior year we provide the ACT test, and they don't have to get a specific score to still get their diploma. They just need to take the test. As far as coursework goes, we have what's called end-of-course exams in core subject areas.
Sure.
And that's given by the classroom teacher now. It used to be more of a standardized test, and if you don't get this score, you fail. Now it's more of a semester exam, if you will.
Sure.
So, if you did well during the school year and you just kind of bombed this one exam, okay, that doesn't mean you can't graduate anymore.
Right.
So Nevada, I think, has looked at a lot of pieces and tried to rectify that.
Now, is that a national trend, or is that just something that's very progressive that's happening here?
That's the state of Nevada.
Nice.
Yes, I don't know what's going on in a lot of the other states as far as the standardized testing goes.
Well, and see, and again, that's what I'm talking about. I mean, when you look, if I had never had this conversation and our listeners never heard these types of things, and I'm sure what you are sharing tonight, there are a lot of other school systems that have similar good news to share. And if I just based on what I read on USA Today, I would think, oh, my goodness, I don't want my kids anywhere. I don't even want them to walk past a public school, let alone walk in the building. So, I mean, I'm just really glad that you've shared these things with us, and also that you are sharing with us that that's not just a local thing, but what you are seeing nationally. And I know you have colleagues across the country that there's a similar mindset in terms of wraparound services and testing and getting those parents involved, because the other thing that you hear is the parents in these schools, the urban schools, the parents aren't involved. The parents are terrible parents. They won't come to PTA night. They won't do a bake sale. All of these types of things. Now, I'm sure in certain instances you do have parents like that, like you would anywhere. But I'm just glad to hear of the good things that are going on in large school districts, that if you just read USA Today or you're just watching Fox News or you're just looking at CNN, you would never be exposed to that kind of very reassuring information. So I really appreciate that. Thin Bad, you had anything else that you wanted to add, sir?
I just wanted to thank her for the job she's doing. As I said, that kind of thing, that kind of success doesn't happen. Success doesn't happen by accident.
Right.
So,
Amen.
Oh, wow. Thanks you being a philosopher.
Great job, and a philosopher. Yeah, right. Yeah, that was my public school training that got me ready for that. I don't wax eloquently.
Yes, Thin Bad and I are proud Baltimore City Public School products. So we certainly, whenever we have the opportunity to engage or to lend our services to any school system, we always jump on that, and it's always a pleasure. And of course, we all know that public schools are a critical element of our society. And as a proud graduate of the Baltimore City Public Schools, I finally remember the lessons learned from my teachers and my friends. I remember those glory days of teachers. Here's one for you, of a teacher showing up at your house, or God forbid if they called your house just before dinner time. That was just going to be a horrible dinner for you if you even got to share those treats that night. But today's school.
About the Last Supper.
That's right. Exactly. Touche. But today's schools, they have a host of challenges, and Principal Marintek, and I know you know better than any of us. Your teachers, your staff, your administrative staff, they have to deal with challenges ranging from active shooter preparation to standardized English tests. And every system does. They have challenges with resources, teacher salaries, an anorexic, PTA structure. The buildings are leaking. They're too hot in the summer, too cold in the winter. Just a host of challenges that you and your colleagues rise to those challenges every single day. And I just want people to understand that our schools are critical. It's easy to lob grenades across the bow and hope it blows up. But the public schools are critical in any jurisdiction. I don't care whether you're in Beverly Hills, California, or Tuscaloosa, Alabama. The schools are critical. And one thing we have to remember, the sacrifices that were made so that we could have public schools, so that young people could get a decent education. There are a whole lot of people that were strung from trees and that were burned and beaten and all kinds of things so that our generation could go to school and learn the 3 R's. And so, a quality education, you just can't, there's no substitute for that. So now it's up to all of us to ensure that all of our schools succeed, whether they're private or parochial. Because even if you don't have children or they attend private schools, it's still important to support your local public school system, period. The future, and this is the other thing, the future of any community is intimately entwined with the success or failure of the educational institutions in that town. It's there is a direct correlation. Certain businesses will not move to certain locations because they've heard certain things or they read USA Today. They didn't have the opportunity to talk to the Belinda Marenteks of the world, and that's unfortunate. So what I say to everyone is get involved. Tutor, mentor, volunteer. The choice is yours, because if our schools fail, we all fail. So that's all the time we have this week. But Principal Marintek, thank you so much for taking some of those tough questions from us, for sharing some amazing things that are going on that we were not aware of. I know I certainly wasn't aware, and I'm so happy that you informed me, because I want to go out and spread the good news as well. And Mbeezy, thank you very much as always.
Yes.
Thin Bad, thank you, sir, for another great show.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. And as always, we thank our listeners. And before I forget, Principal Marintek, have a great Thanksgiving, because I know it's coming up next week. You probably have to rush off the show now and go get your pie started and your stuffing and all that stuff.
And also shout out to the student from your school who makes our awesome intros and outros.
Yes, indeed.
Yes,
Yes.
Tao.
Shout
Yes,
out to Tao.
Tao.
Because those are his beats that we're using to go in and out of our commercials. So
So those are the great things being produced in the Clark County School District Public Schools.
absolutely. And if you don't know, you better ask somebody. You know.
Thank you.
And as always,
If you'd love
yes,
to
ma'am.
have some students on, from the Valley, I know my son is with the Team Talk program on his radio show, and they would probably love to come out and be guests from the students' perspective, maybe.
Well, you know what? We're going to hold you to that, and we will definitely have a show where we feature our students because
A
it's so
little
important.
takeover.
Yeah, it's so important that we hear from them, and thank you for that suggestion. And we're definitely going to do that. And of course, as always, we thank our listeners for hanging in there with us and allowing us to give it to you.
Straight no chaser.
Thank you for listening to Straight No Chaser.